Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate you watching the video, liking, commenting, subscribing. That really does help me out a lot. And I want to talk about the floating worm because this is probably something you're familiar with, but maybe you've never caught a bass on it. I'm going to try to give you specific scenarios where this really shines and what type of lakes you're going to throw it on. So here we go. The floating worm. Those crazy colored trick worms you see, that's what this technique is all about. Pretty self-explanatory on how to fish it and rig it. I think that is not necessarily the most important part of this. I just put it on a 4/0 round bend worm hook, possibly put a swivel on there if you're getting a lot of line twists, because this bait does spin and will create line twists. But the most important thing is what type of lakes, when do you throw it, and what to look for. So let's dive into that. You know, you can use the white one, bubblegum, methylate, yellow. I've never really thrown the yellow or the bubblegum one. Pretty much just methylate and white have been the ones I like, but I'm sure they all work. I don't think color, I mean, obviously color is the whole thing, but I don't think it's that important. As long as you have one of those 4 colors, I think you'll be fine. So let's dive into the lakes that I've seen this really shine on, because I think that's probably the most important part of this deal. So we're in that weird time where there's still fish out in 20 feet of water. Obviously, you're seeing a lot of the live scope guys still crush them out there. You have some fish on the bank, not a ton, but there's a decent population of fish on the bank. And then we're going to be maybe weeks away, maybe days away, who knows, depending on the weather around your house. Spawners, therefore we'll have post spawners in a short period of time. So you really have fish that are pre-spawn shallow, pre-spawn deep, spawning, post-spawn, and fish have maybe seen a lot of baits, maybe they haven't seen any baits, but either way, there's not really one bait that I feel like is just going to dominate right now, because there's a ton of different baits and they're going to all work a little bit. But here's the main deal that I've found with this bait. When you have a ton of fish on a lake and you're having trouble catching quality, this is one of those deals that's going to help you figure out if there's quality around. Because I don't know necessarily why this happens, other than it's just purely magic. But let's say you're throwing a chatterbait, you're throwing a crankbait, and for whatever reason, you're just seeing 14-incher, 15-incher, 1.5-pounder, maybe a 2-pounder, and you know the lake's got bigger fish than that. That's when you need to lean on this floating worm. You know, we're getting around the time where a swim jig starts becoming more of a deal than your other reaction pre-spawn baits, your spinner baits, your chatter baits, your lipless crankbaits, your square bills. A swim jig really starts to shine once that water gets around 60 degrees. The methylate trick worm or a white trick worm is also going to start to play. And I don't know why, other than the fact that they've just seen a lot of those baits. They start to get weird. They're starting to get pretty pressured, and something like a darting, colorful bait in their face just really gets them to bite. So what will tend to happen, and I've seen this on Sam Rayburn, where a lot of guys were catching them on a swim jig, but the floating worm also played. I've seen this on Lake Martin, where it was just everyone could catch a ton of fish, like 20, 30 fish a day, but it was hard to get fish that were over 2.5 pounds. That bait played. I've seen it happen on the Tennessee River, where you got them biting really everything. They're biting the post-spawn stuff, the pre-spawn stuff, and this bait just tends to get your biggest bite of the day. So it's important to at least implement this when you go shallow. And this is going to be one of those baits that you're going to be throwing in spawning type areas, you know, backs of creek arms, pockets, things like that. This bait isn't really going to shine, you know, out on the main lake, you know, in wind or something like that. It's not going to work. You really want it in that more calmer water, and then you're just kind of fishing it slow, and you're just going to see your worm just dart back and forth. And that, for whatever reason, works really well. And it's just this small window. I put it in that 58 to 60 degrees. Yeah, you can probably catch them in the post-spawn, but it's more of a pre-spawn type bait, the floating worm. Give that a try, guys. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.